Good evening, hello and welcome. Happy Mahanavami Friday night. This is your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points, and we have big talking points tonight. As the war in West Asia continues to escalate, what does the war mean for India and the world and the United States? The world's top geopolitical expert, Fareed Zakaria, in an exclusive interview, will join me shortly to give us the big picture. But the story that's breaking this evening, there's been a fresh Israel strike that has struck near the United Nations headquarters in South Lebanon. Peacekeepers have been injured in the South Lebanon strike, and it has led to global concern. India, among other countries, expressing concern over an attack on a UN office. India says UN premises must be respected by all. Israel claims that Hezbollah was using these UN outposts as a shield. Tensions are now rising, as we can see, in the region, and all of this coming ahead of the US presidential elections and, of course, the continuing standoff between Israel and Iran. And joining me now today is a very special guest, joined by one of the world's leading global voices, CNN's GPS show anchor, columnist with the Washington Post, political commentator, author, latest book, Age of Revolutions, Fareed Zakaria. Always good to see you. We're speaking at a moment in time in the world where the world seems to be on the precipice of an escalating war in West Asia, and we've got a US presidential election in less than a month. Let's talk about the war first. It's been more than a year, and if anything, the bombing seems to be further intensifying with the threat of the war spreading to other parts of West Asia. How frightening is the specter now of this escalating conflict in West Asia?
Thanks, Rajdeep. Always a pleasure to be with you. And I think you framed it well, because I do think that we are now at a moment of real danger of something escalating into a regional war. Because what has happened now is that we have shifted from the Israel-Gaza issue, which is a separate issue in a sense, and there's all kinds of issues relating to disproportionate use of force and things like that. But the outcome is obvious. Israel is the giant here, right? What we now have is Israel trying to take on a very thorny problem it has been facing for many years now. What Iran has been doing for the last, I would say, 10 years is using an array of proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the militias in Iraq and Syria, to put pressure on Israel and occasionally on Saudi Arabia and the UAE to keep them off guard. And finally, Israel has decided, rightly or wrongly, it has decided it is going to take the battle to the enemy. And so that you have to view the attacks on Lebanon as a wholly different issue. What Israel is trying to do is to end this dynamic of constant rocket fire coming from Hezbollah into northern Israel, the Houthi fire coming from the Yemen into Israel. And so they're pushing back, and they are now beginning to ask themselves, should we push back against Iran itself? So what you are seeing now is an effort by Israel to say, enough of this dynamic where we are constantly being bombarded, rained on by these rockets. Yes, they don't get through because we have this iron defense, but we are going to reestablish deterrence in the north. Now, the big question is, will it work, and will Iran be willing to accept this changed dynamic, or will it respond? And that's why I say it's the moment of maximum danger, because now you have the real possibility of direct escalation, directed for tat, between Israel and Iran. And Iran is, it's not a very powerful country, but it's not a militia like Hezbollah. This is 80 million people, one of the world's largest petroleum exporters.
So is that a possibility or an inevitability now of a direct Israel-Iran conflict, given what Iran did last week with its ballistic missile attacks? Because that seems to be the real danger at the moment for even countries like India, what that would do not just to regional peace, but to oil supplies, the fact that that would perhaps bring the United States also more directly into the conflict. Are these now, is it almost inevitable more than just possible?
It's inevitable there will be some trading of attacks. Let me put it to you this way. The Biden administration is trying to convince Iran, the Biden administration is trying to convince Israel to strike Iran, but in a way that is not dangerously escalatory. What does that mean? That means don't hit the nuclear programs, the nuclear sites, which remember are to this point still civilian sites. Don't hit the oil refineries, which is Iran's lifeblood. Hit military sites, intelligence sites, and such. And what they're then hoping is that the Iranians will view that as not escalatory and might do something modest or moderate in response. And then the Israelis can maybe do something even more moderate. You see, they're trying to engineer a kind of de-escalation cycle where each strike then becomes lower in magnitude. The danger is, A, the Israelis won't listen, and B, the Iranians might not perceive it that way. So, there's a lot that could go wrong here. But the administration is hoping that the Israeli strike will be viewed by the Iranians as not the worst thing they could do. Therefore, the Iranians will do something, lesser, and then the Israelis will. So you kind of, it's almost like landing a plane.
To add to your A and B, Israel may not listen, Iran may respond very differently. Is C, you mentioned the Biden administration, which is really, many believe, a bit of a lame duck at the moment, doesn't have the moral and political authority to impose itself on the region. We've got an election in just a few weeks. Does that make it even more complicated?
It does make it more complicated. I think the issue is not so much moral authority or any of that, because, the only country with which it has leverage is Israel, and Israel doesn't think the Biden administration should be pushing it harder on the Gaza issue. If anything, they think it's pushing too hard. But there is this reality of the politics of it. This is not an easy time for any American administration to put a lot of pressure on Israel. And the Biden administration is caught in a situation where already the pressure it has put on Israel is costing it very dearly in the American political system. There are lots of people in America who believe that the Biden administration is being too tough on Israel. And there are lots of people who think it's being too soft on Israel. So it's trying to walk a very narrow path. There's only a month left. And by the way, add to all this, Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is one of the most shrewd players in the world and one of the shrewdest observers of the American political scene. He knows everything you and I have just said, Rajdeep. And so he knows he has a window in the next 30 days where he can act with greater freedom than he would perhaps once the election is done.
We'll come to the election in a moment, but therefore what you seem to suggest, given what Bibi Netanyahu is probably thinking at the moment, the next 30 days could see further escalation. So these 4 weeks in that sense become critical now, given the fact that Israel has held off so far from striking against Iran. But are we going to see whatever has to play out possibly even further in the next 4 weeks? Already today, a UN mission has complained that there have been bombings close to the UN mission in Beirut. So are we going to see a further escalation? Is Netanyahu determined for his own political survival and identity to go on escalating with this war?
See, the reason I think you're right that there's a real danger of this kind of escalation is it's not just Netanyahu. Everything you said about Bibi Netanyahu is correct. But add to it, this is one area where he is not pushing and the rest of the war cabinet is reluctantly going along. This is a case where the other members of the war cabinet, Gallant, the defense minister, the heads of the Israeli defense forces, are also fairly aggressive. Because as I said, you have to understand what Israel has been facing for several years now is this series of militia attacks, bombardments, rockets being rained. And there has been a strong sentiment within the Israeli security establishment that we have to change this dynamic. We have to establish some kind of deterrence coming out of there. You can imagine there's a similarity here in terms of India-Pakistan, where there is this, when you face this kind of pinprick attack, these pinprick militia or terrorist attacks, call them what you will, at some point, there is often a feeling within the larger, the stronger nation. Yes, we can deal with these, we can absorb them, but should we strike back and reestablish deterrence?
No, but there's one thing to strike back, and there's the other thing to strike back disproportionately. The criticism of Israel has been that they have struck at Gaza and particularly disproportionately, killing thousands of innocent civilians as a result. And that, in a way, has also led many leaders in the world to say, enough is enough, we need to stop it. Do you really see the war, therefore, at all, Israel being put in a situation where the global community can't put any pressure anymore? Does anyone have any leverage, really?
Not really, Rajdeep. As you know, I agree with you. I think Israel has used disproportionate force. It's also used it unintelligently. It's radicalized the entire population in Gaza. It appears to be doing the same thing in southern Lebanon. And in both places, what it's going to find is when you bomb so much and you destroy so much civilian infrastructure, you also create ungovernable spaces. You create these kind of badlands where then you have to occupy. And you're mired in an occupation. They will have to reoccupy Gaza. My guess is they will have to reoccupy parts of Lebanon. Remember, they were in there for almost 20 years. And these are no-win disasters for Israel. But Israel, to answer your question, Israel, I think most people don't understand that October 7th of last year was a kind of existential moment of fear and panic for Israel. They are in a kind of moment where they say, to hell with the world, we are going to do what we have to do. We are going to scare the living daylights out of our neighbors so that they never dare do anything like this again. Is it all wise? Is it strategic? Not in my view. In my view, what they're doing is going to create a lot of problems for them down the road. But what I mean is they are at a moment where they are not listening to the United States, and that's really the only power that has any leverage over them.
You mentioned the United States. If now, as seems inevitable, the conflict does expand into an Israel-Iran conflict, does that draw the United States invariably more directly into the conflict, given the fact that Iran is one of the countries of the world that the U.S. State Department labels a state sponsor of terror, one of the countries that the U.S. for years has said is the center of terror and radicalism?
My guess is the U.S. will try to stay out, except in the sense that it will provide defensive technology and defensive help to Israel. So if Iranian rockets rain over Israeli cities, the U.S. will try to interdict them. But I don't think the U.S. will get directly involved. I think America has been trying to play the role of kind of dampening the pressures, bringing down the temperature. And they recognize, I think, that if they were to get involved directly in any offensive move, that would then have the danger of escalating things further.
So before we come to the U.S. presidential election, the best case and worst case scenario that you therefore see in West Asia in the near term, and when I say near term, I mean over the next month or two.
Best case, the Israelis do a limited strike on Iranian military facilities, not the oil refineries, not the nuclear program. The Iranians read that as a de-escalation. They themselves then maybe fire, 50 rockets at places, giving enough notice that they know they'll all get interdicted. The Israelis regard that as okay, where either we're down to nothing, or maybe we do something small. And as I say, the plane lands. You get a de-escalation cycle. The worst case scenario is the Israelis strike Iran's nuclear facilities or oil refineries. The Iranians regard that as massively escalatory. They do something big. By the way, oil will go to, $200 a gallon or $150 a gallon momentarily. And then that sets off a kind of global panic. So I think there's a lot that could go wrong here.
Given the fact that there seems little prospect, therefore, of any kind of ceasefire in West Asia at the moment, how does that, before the November 5th election, how does that play out on the polls? Let's look at the impact it has domestically. You're there in America. How is this playing out among the people? Is that the top issue on the minds of the people, or is it still the economy?
The issues in the U.S. election are mostly domestic. It's the economy, it's immigration, it's these cultural issues like abortion, with a so-called woke agenda. Foreign policy plays a limited role. But here's the problem, Rajdeep. The election is a statistical tie. There are these 7 states that matter. In each of these states, whichever candidate is winning, they are winning by 1 or 2 points, well within the margin of error. So when we have traditionally said foreign policy doesn't matter, that's wrong. It matters because 50,000 people in Michigan voting one way or the other could make a big difference. 25,000 people voting in Pennsylvania could make a difference. People forget this, but in the last election, Joe Biden won the popular vote by, I forget now, millions and millions of votes, but I think it was 5 million votes.
That's right.
But he won the Electoral College by 43,000 votes in one state. If 43,000 votes had gone differently in one state, you would have had a different outcome. And when the margins are that low, everything matters. The weather will matter, so foreign policy will matter.
Because, Jewish American voters have traditionally tended to vote for the Democrats. You've got sizable Jewish communities in some of the swing states, Pennsylvania, in Georgia. Same can be now even said of Arab American communities in Pennsylvania and Michigan. So is there that split in U.S. society when it comes to the war in West Asia that could reflect on preferences between Democrats and Republicans?
Yes. Again, I wouldn't exaggerate as a kind of American issue that is causing vast majorities of people to change their votes. Mm-hmm. But the point is that a small group of people changing their votes could matter. Most Jewish Americans live in large states that are democratic. So the Jewish vote is not so big a deal. Most Jewish Americans live in New York and California and New Jersey and Connecticut and Illinois. Those are very safe blue states. But there are some, as you say, in Pennsylvania. But the more significant thing here is Arab Americans in Michigan and in Pennsylvania.
Let me, though, look at the two candidates, contenders for presidency, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. How much of a difference will it make to the war in West Asia and in general to world peace, given what's happening in Ukraine as well? Who becomes the next president of America? Does that make a major impact on U.S. foreign policy choices in the near term now?
It's a good question, Rajdeep. On the war in West Asia, I actually don't think it will make that much difference. The American political system largely reflects the reality that Americans are very pro-Israel. And that is not a Joe Biden thing. That is, remember when Barack Obama tried to put a certain amount of pressure on Israel to stop the settlements in the West Bank and things like that. Netanyahu just went to the Republicans in Congress, did a kind of end run around Obama and got what he wanted because the congressional support was so strong. So Trump may be a bit more pro-Israel than Biden, but you never know with Trump because it's all so personal. But I don't think that will make that much difference. The war in Ukraine, I think it does make a big difference. Look, Trump basically has some kind of a affection for Putin. We've seen this in the recent revelations that he sent Putin COVID tests in the early part of the pandemic. And he regards Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine is the place where that was his first impeachment because he essentially tried to blackmail President Zelensky. When Zelensky asked for weapons, he said, I'll give you weapons if you will start an investigation into Joe Biden. So that piece of it, Trump has a bad history with Ukraine, whereas Kamala Harris will continue Biden's policy of very strong support for for Ukraine. So there, I think you're going to see a big difference. The huge difference on foreign policy for India, of course, will be Trump has promised tariffs, 10% tariffs on all goods coming from around the world, and he has criticized Indian, back office, outsourcing. That is a much, much larger impact on the economy than anything. Every other issue will pale in insignificance if Trump actually does what he says, what he repeatedly promises he intends to do, which is to put tariffs.
Interestingly, you almost seem to suggest that a Harris administration therefore might be more favorable to the Indian government than a Trump administration.
Look, Rajdeep, the problem with Trump is you always never know if he means what he says because, let's face it. I mean, this is a guy who's most of his life bullshitted his way through whatever he's doing, even when he was president. I mean, I think they counted, some Washington Post account was there were 30,000, let's say, misstatements or falsehoods. So you don't know what he's going to do. But if he does what he says he's going to do, and he keeps saying this, 10% tariffs across the board, 60% on China, I mean, that would be very, very tough on the Indian economy. For India to move to its next phase of growth, it needs to be able to export high value added goods, particularly to markets like the US. So I think it also has the broader danger of actually beginning a kind of decoupling of this world of globalization, because other countries will feel the need to have to put some kind of retaliatory tariffs. So that's a very dark scenario if it actually happens. And it's a scenario, by the way, in which the US might be fine because the US is a huge domestic economy, and China might be fine because China is a huge domestic economy. But for the rest of the world, it'll be very tough.
I'm not sure whether you're a betting man, but if you were a betting man, given, as you said, the swing states within the margin of error in this US presidential election, who do you think has the edge as we stand today?
The polling suggests that Kamala Harris has the edge. She has a 3-point advantage nationally. And if you look at the swing states, if every state were to go the way the polling currently has it, she would narrowly win. But Rajdeep, I'm not a betting man in general, but I would definitely not put a bet on this one because the margins are 1%, 0.5%, in some cases 0.25%. And my concern is Trump has tended to do better than the polls in general. There is this phenomenon of the shy Trump voter.
That's right.
The person who is unwilling to admit to the pollster that he or she is going to vote for Trump. We saw the shy Modi, the shy anti-Modi voter in the last Indian election. There's some similar, thing going on here.
We're getting our polls horribly wrong, one state after the other, national election, now even state elections like Haryana. But in conclusion, Fareed, let me just bring you back to West Asia and India. Do you think India has any role at all to play? Do you believe we have any leverage either in West Asia or in Ukraine, because we keep hearing voices saying we want India to play a role? Is India's best option just to stay away and watch this unfold?
No, I think India has a very viable role, and Prime Minister Modi actually has a role because he's on the international stage, he's often been quite skillful. Look, India has always, despite all the fancy, self-righteous rhetoric, and this goes back to the days of Krishna Menon and Nehru, India actually doesn't play a very big role in foreign policy. It is opportunistic. It largely minds its own business. But if it wanted to, it actually has a very viable role, and I think it would be a very constructive role to play. Look, the war in Ukraine is frozen. There are very few parties who have the credibility to talk to both sides. I would argue there are really only two leaders worldwide, Erdogan of Turkey and Modi in India. So if Prime Minister Modi were to propose some kind of situation where he acts as an intermediary and conveys messages from the Russians to the Ukrainians and vice versa, I think he could play a very constructive role, and I think it would be useful to do it. It would raise India's profile. The question is, does he want, this is one thing that people will begin to realize about the US. To play this role of honest broker and global player, it's a thankless task, because you don't get that much for it, and everybody blames you.
People will be clipping what you're saying now. Fareed Zakaria is saying that Erdogan of Turkey and Prime Minister Modi are the two world leaders, you believe, who can play the role of a potential honest broker between Putin and Zelensky.
Correct. And I think Modi even more than Erdogan. This is Modi's great opportunity to be a global statesman, should he want it. I think he would have to get energetically involved, and he would have to, be willing to really be an honest broker. But I think he has the platform, he has the potential, and I think he has the diplomatic skill to do it.
In conclusion, therefore, Farid, do you believe that the world is in a more dangerous place than it was a year ago? We referred briefly to October 7th, 2023, the attack by Hamas. Has that, on the back of what happened in Ukraine, disrupted the world entirely? Are we heading towards a new, more chaotic world order with a, dare I say, weakened United States, irrespective of who comes to power after November 5th? Are we seeing, therefore, a multipolar, weakened world, therefore potentially more disruptive?
The way I would put it, Rajdeep, is we are seeing multiple challenges to the international order that the United States and the West set up in 1945, and that was then expanded after the end of the Cold War. You are seeing a frontal assault to that security system in Europe and to the values, the core values of that system, which are no aggression, no acquisition of territory by force, no legitimization of conquest. That's happening in Europe, at the central arena in Europe. You're seeing in the Middle East an Iranian effort to kind of upend the US-led security system that rests on countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. You are seeing in East Asia a more quiet effort by China to slowly but steadily replace the United States as the dominant power in the region. So you really have these three arenas, Europe, East Asia, and West Asia, where you are seeing challenges to the existing international order. The question is, will the United States and other countries that believe in that order, and I would argue India benefits enormously from this order and should be willing to play a part, will those countries come together to shore up that order? Because you're right, Rajdeep, the United States is very powerful, but it is no longer so powerful that it can do it all on its own. It needs help.
Okay. Farid Zakaria, as always, wonderful to have you on the show to share your wisdom and give us the big picture as we enter these uncertain times. Thank you so much. Stay well, stay safe, and always good to talk to you. We'll, of course, talk to you, I hope, closer to the elections and then post that. These are exciting times, but turbulent times as well. Thank you so much for joining me.
Always a pleasure, Rajdeep.
Okay, let's move from the big global story to the big story back home, where 3 days after its shock defeat in Haryana, the Congress party is still grappling with internal crises. Glaring cracks within the party are slowly surfacing as netas from Haryana are targeting former Chief Minister Bhupinder Hooda and his son Dipinder Hooda, who are the faces of the Congress's campaign there. Amidst the internal rift, Congress chief President Mallikarjun Kharge is convening meetings after meetings to address the fallout, and the Congress is continuing to take its case to the Election Commission, claiming that some of the EVMs were managed. Take a look.
The Congress is in deep crisis in Haryana, a state with the faction-ridden Grand Old Party hoped to win power but were stunned by the BJP, which won a third term. Days after the poll debacle, Congress candidates are lashing out at former Chief Minister Bhupinder Hooda and his son in Lok Sabha MP Dipinder Hooda.
कि एक ही छत के नीचे रहने वाले परिवार जो 6 बार इलेक्शन हार जाते हैं, उसके बावजूद भी कांग्रेस पार्टी उनको एक टिकट देती है, तो एक टिकट से भी ना खुश हुए और उन्होंने अपनी बेटी को कंबाला छावनी से बेतौर आज़ाद उम्मीदवार के तौर पे उतारा। और बीडी गैंग जो मैंने बोला कि भूपिंदर जी और दीपिंदर जी का पूरा सपोर्ट होता है उनको।
राहुल गांधी के आने पे ही थोड़ी गड़बड़ हुई। जो स्टेट लीडरशिप थी उनको अच्छा नहीं लगा कि डायरेक्ट असंध में राहुल गांधी कैसे, तो आपने देखा होगा कि हुड्डा साहब ने स्टेज से मेरा नाम तक नहीं लिया।
राहुल जी के नेतृत्व में हमने ये
Even the High Command is under fire.
मिसमैनेजमेंट रहा। हमारे जो प्रभारी महोदय हैं वो अस्पताल में थे, मैंने उनको फोन किया कि भाई मेरे पास प्रफुल्ल पटेल जी आए हैं और वो कह रहे हैं राहुल जी का रोड शो है, उसके बारे में मुझे बताइए। कि मैं तो आइसोलेशन में हूँ, आप अजय माकन जी से बात कीजिए, आप जो है वीनू गोपाल जी से बात कीजिए, उनसे बात करते रहे हम। उन्होंने कहा कि अभी ऐसा कोई प्रोग्राम है नहीं।
The Congress leadership, including President Mallikarjun Kharge, held a meeting on Thursday to discuss the election result. Sources say Rahul Gandhi, without taking any names, said state leaders had put personal interest above party's interest. After a meeting conspicuous by the absence of two warring leaders of Haryana, Bhupinder Hooda and Kumari Shelja, the leaders decided to form a committee to study reasons for the defeat.
किसी को भी उम्मीद नहीं थी कि ये नतीजे आएंगे, तो हम लोगों ने उसकी चर्चा करी, अलग-अलग कारण क्या हो सकते हैं, इसके ऊपर चर्चा करी.
The divide between Hooda and Shelja was quite well known. The Congress has paid a heavy price in Haryana for its failure in controlling the regional satraps. With Mausami Singh, Bureau Report, India Today.
So where does the Congress go from here? A short while ago, I spoke to the Congress leader and spokesperson of its head of its media cell, Pawan Khera. Listen in. And joining me now is the Congress's media in charge, Pawan Khera joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Khera. It's now what, 3 days since the Haryana debacle, if I may use that word, for the Congress. Are you now accepting the fact that you need to introspect rather than blame the EVMs, which was your first reaction when you lost on Tuesday?
Rajdeep, it cannot ever be an either-or situation. The problems that you are talking about, which we should introspect about within the party, of course that should happen and that will happen and that is happening. Does not mean that we ignore something as vital and critical to an election as the EVM, which now today, as we speak, we've already sent 20 constituencies where clear, stark, brazen anomalies were visible, recorded by our candidates. That needs to be, the Election Commission needs to be apprised of that. Does not mean that we just choose to introspect and do not choose to completely ignore the EVM issue. No, I'm sorry, that can't happen. Both need to be done, and both are being done.
So you're saying that you will continue to pursue your claim that there was something, that there was some malfunctioning in the EVMs or something happened with certain EVMs that put you back. But the question arises that surely, Pawan Khera, you need to also recognize that the moment you blame EVMs, there will be people, those who are out there saying the Congress is a sore loser, that you're not willing to accept that maybe some of your strategies, your Hooda-centric strategy, your ground game, the booth-level organization needed, all of that went wrong, that the Congress is being a sore loser, not confronting the reality that you lost a winning election.
This is, Rajdeep, this is a very clear example of argument by intimidation. You intimidate the other side. Oh, since you pointed questions at the EVM, oh, you are a sore loser. Most of us will sit quiet, silent, don't want to be blamed, don't want to be labeled as sore losers. But no, I'm sorry. One has to catch the bull by its horns. There comes a time in life, and this is the clear example where, in the Lok Sabha election, Rajnandgaon Lok Sabha seat, Mr. Bhupesh Baghel kept talking about these 99% battery machines. And we were trying to grapple with it. We were trying to understand what is he even saying. And now we now realize what he was saying. So seat after seat in his parliamentary segment, machine after machine, showing 99% battery after the battery should be consumed because the battery was used on the entire day of polling. And after that, the battery is still 99%. It's unthinkable, impossible, completely impossible.
No, I've been speaking to EC officials, both present as well as past, and they believe that they do not think it is possible to infiltrate the machine. They say there are enough people on the ground, including of all the parties represented. They are there monitoring those machines. They are claiming that there is no way that a particular machine in a specific area, since it is not connected to a wider system, can be infiltrated in the manner that the Congress party is suggesting.
Look, we are questioning the EC on technical grounds. We demand answers on technical grounds. no speculations in answers, just as there have been no speculations in our questions. We've given them our recorded evidence of 99% battery. We want to understand how. We've also spoken to experts who are technical experts. They understand how a battery, alkaline battery functions. We've also taken advice from experts. Now we demand answers, and the EC, instead of acting like a touch-me-not, should come up with answers, because at the end of the day, the faith of every single voter is important on the electoral process.
No, the faith is important, but you see the worry, of course, then, and I don't, the Congress is supposed to have had a meeting yesterday chaired by your party president, Mallikarjun Kharge. You did not involve local leaders of Haryana in that. Is there going to be this parallel issue of accountability, that if, as is being alluded by some, that tickets were monopolized by specific individuals, that there are even allegations that some of your own party men are making ki ticket bechi gayi, is what some of those who didn't get tickets have alleged. Will all those allegations be looked at the way the campaign was managed? Will it be looked at or not?
Rajdeep, you and I have seen enough elections. We know how people respond when we win. You know how people respond when we lose. But having said that, whatever were the shortcomings in our campaign, whatever were the shortcomings in the way we fought the election, of course they will be looked at. I mean, मुझे जुकाम भी है और मेरा पाँव भी दर्द है, तो आप कहेंगे साहब जुकाम को इग्नोर करो, सिर्फ पाँव दर्द को देखो, ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता ना. तो ईसी भी जाएंगे और हमारे भीतर हमें क्या सुधार करने वो भी करेंगे.
Because there is a sense that the problem with the Congress is that accountability and responsibility is never fixed. And therefore, some people get away time and again with mismanaging an election. Will there be accountability? We were told Rahul Gandhi in particular was extremely angry with the fact that there are individuals who he claimed who had put their personal interests above that of the party. Now, those are all fine words. Will that lead to action? You've got 5 weeks to a Maharashtra election. Will the Congress now
Rajdeep,
ensure accountability?
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened in the meeting. I was not there, so I can't comment on what went on in that room, in that meeting. Having said that, you are talking about lack of accountability in a party whose president, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, resigned after the 2019 debacle. Don't forget that. And here is the party called the BJP, where the Prime Minister was in so much of a rush to become the Prime Minister again that he did not even consider it proper or correct to go through the BJP, get himself elected as the legislative party, parliamentary party leader, and then go to the NDA. No, he just short-circuited the BJP, went straight to the NDA, got himself elected as the leader of NDA. How? So don't talk about accountability. When you come to comparing our party with the BJP, you will see we are far more accountable, answerable, introspective, not arrogant. And, Lok Sabha election, Rajdeep, 2024, was fought in the name of Mr. Narendra Modi. What happened in Haryana? This Vidhan Sabha election was fought in the name of Naib Singh Saini. How can Modi consider this as his victory and not Naib Singh Saini's victory? And how can Modi not consider Lok Sabha results of Haryana as his defeat?
But would you concede, Pawan Khera, that all of this has given the BJP the momentum going into Maharashtra, that while you grapple with, while you introspect, while you claim that you want to know technically what, according to you, is a malfunctioning EVM, are you accepting that the momentum now going into Maharashtra and Jharkhand, likely in November now, is with the BJP? So the tables have turned after the Lok Sabha?
No, that's a dream which BJP can go on seeing and go on trying to convince people that the momentum is in their favor. Having said that, the list of people in Jharkhand and Maharashtra who want to join the Congress and NCP and Shiv Sena, the original Shiv Sena of ours, is long and increasing. Every day we are getting requests, people from the BJP wanting to join these three Mahagadi. Why?
You see, you're claiming that, but we saw the same thing in Haryana. People lining up outside Bhupinder Singh Hooda's house wanting a Congress ticket. Eventually, those who didn't get tickets turned out to be rebels. It comes down to organization. The BJP tells me, I was speaking to the BJP state in charge, Satish Punia, 2 days ago. He said, just a minute, he said, Sangathan ki jeet hai. Are you willing to concede that that is your big Achilles heel, and can you fix it in time for Maharashtra to get your Sangathan, your organization working smoothly?
No. Rajdeep, you cannot generalize all the states just looking at Haryana. Perhaps we had organizational deficiency in Haryana, whereas in Maharashtra, we are a party which came number 1 in the Lok Sabha elections. So you know how many seats we got there. So you cannot compare Haryana with Maharashtra. Our organization is pretty strong there. Our block level, booth level, every level, we have a very strong presence of our cadre, which is very enthused. And perhaps Haryana has also acted as a wake-up call. Even if they were not so aware and alert, now they are alert, more alert than they should be.
Okay, so let me ask you in conclusion, the one thing, the biggest lesson you've learned from Haryana that you promised that you will not replicate in Maharashtra. What will the Congress do in Maharashtra that you didn't do or you got wrong in Haryana? If there's one lesson, big lesson, apart from the EVM controversy, which will play itself out.
We should stop watching television. All those people all of us who are in politics going in for an election should just switch our televisions off.
Why is that? Why is that, Pawan Kheda?
Television always misleads. It misleads you into believing. Television misleads you into believing that you're winning or believing that you're losing.
So you're blaming television for your overconfidence.
Election after election.
Pawan Kheda is blaming television for the overconfidence you are blaming pollsters and media persons who predicted a Congress win for your overconfidence on the ground.
No, we never take you guys seriously. I'm sorry to say that to your face.
Okay.
And I'm just conveying this same message to all our workers also. Do not take television, pollsters, anything seriously. Just take your own effort, your own hard work, your sincerity, your feet on the ground. That's what it needs to be taken seriously. Nothing else matters.
Okay. Strong words from you, Pawan Kheda. I appreciate you joining me and giving us a sense of where the Congress stands 72 days after the Haryana elections. Thank you so much for joining me. And after Haryana, the next battle for the Congress and the BJP will be Maharashtra. Elections are expected to be announced next week. But ahead of them, the Eknath Shinde government is on a spree of sops. They've just tripled the salaries of madrasa teachers, hiked up minority grants. This has triggered a row in Maharashtra, with the opposition claiming that the very government that accuses them of appeasement is now engaging in its own form of vote jihad. Listen in.
It's raining sops in Maharashtra ahead of the assembly elections. The Eknath Shinde government on Thursday cleared nearly 80 proposals, including a recommendation to increase the non-creamy layer in the OBC quota from 8 lakh rupees per year to 15 lakh rupees per year. The Mahayuti government has also decided to increase salaries of madrasa teachers by nearly 3 times. Primary teachers with diploma in education will see their monthly pay increase from 6,000 to 16,000 rupees per month. Secondary school teachers with B.Ed degrees will get a hike from 8,000 to 18,000 rupees per month. The government decided to increase the share capital of the Maulana Azad Minorities Financial Development Corporation from 700 crore rupees to 1,000 crore rupees. The opposition is taking pot shots at the BJP over the decision to hike salaries of madrasa teachers, reminding Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis of his vote jihad remark.
ये जो अंधभक्त है, मेरा सवाल है उनसे, क्या ये वोट जिहाद नहीं है? ये वोट के लिए क्या है ना, लाडली बहन हो, देखिए बढ़ना चाहिए वेतन, जो पढ़ाता है, हाँ, जो स्कूल में या बच्चों को पढ़ाता है, उनको पगार मिलना चाहिए, वेतन मिलना चाहिए, ठीक से मिलना चाहिए. लेकिन क्या अगर ये हम लोग करते तो बोलते वोट जिहाद है, तो आपने क्या किया?
The BJP has defended the state government's decision.
अभी संजय राउत ने इतने बारी किया, पिछले बारी से जो भी शिवसेना के उम्मीदवार है बुल्ढाना जिले के, जरा बूथ वाइज जाके स्टडी करो कि मुसलमानों ने 99% वोटिंग उबाटा गठा को करे हुआ. हम कोई मतों के लिए किसके काम करते नहीं, जो लोग अच्छे काम करते हैं उनको मदद करने का काम हमारी महायुति की सरकार करती है.
The Mahayuti government in its budget had already announced welfare measures worth nearly 1 lakh crore rupees. 46,000 crore rupees is allocated for the Ladki Bahin scheme, which gives 1,500 rupees per month to women from poor families. 10,000 crore rupees for Chief Minister Youth Work Training Scheme, 3 gas cylinders per household benefiting nearly 52 lakh families, 2,000 crore rupees for girls free higher education scheme, 14,716 crore rupees for power concession scheme benefiting around 44 lakh farmers. The State Finance Department has already warned that the government's fiscal deficit could be as high as 2 lakh crore rupees for 2024-25.
As Maharashtra's Mahayuti government rolls out several flagship schemes ahead of Maharashtra's assembly polls, it faces mounting financial strain, struggling to pay many stakeholders in the state development. With my colleague Mustafa Sheikh and video journalist Mandar Sawan, myself Ritvik Bhalekar for India Today, Mumbai.
Okay, before I leave you tonight, I want to wish all our viewers a happy Dashera weekend, Shubh Mahanavmi. It is, of course, Durga Ashtami and plenty more. And I want to leave you with a story that reflects the festive atmosphere. Durga Puja Pandal in South Kolkata aims to create awareness about the issue of river pollution by displaying real garbage taken from the Ganga. The Pandal displays scenic ghats of Varanasi and Prayagraj and also the harsh reality of polluted riverbanks with plastic bottles and so much more. We hope that Ma Durga will help us all join together in cleaning up the Ganga. That's our Good News Today story. Stay well, stay safe, have a festive weekend. Bye for now.
This Durga Puja Pandal in South Kolkata has become the talk of the town. Beautiful temples, lit up ghats, a river. The Chetla Agrani, the popular Pandal, now resembles Banaras and Prayagraj. It tells the story of Ganga right from its source, Lord Shiva's hair.
The river, as I mentioned, which is a mother to thousands and a lifeline to everyone that stays on its banks. It needs to be respected more, and people who come over here to flock the Pandal and have a look at this beautiful goddess that is inside this Pandal, that they have to respect the Ganges and make sure that they do not pollute it in any way whatsoever. And a clean Ganges needs to be given out to the future generations because we have received it as well.
The theme of the year is pollution.
गंगा को हम लोग पोल्यूटेड कर दे रहे हैं, अशुद्ध कर दे रहे हैं, और अगर ये चलते रहा तो फिर गंगा उधर देख के गंगा ये भविष्य का गंगा ये हो जाएगा। ये सब गंगा से उठाया गया है। यहाँ पर पूजा के माध्यम में हम अवेयरनेस करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, सेव गंगा।
Thousands have visited the Chetla Agrani Pandal this year. But will the story of Ganga told by the organizers make any lasting impact at all? With Suryagni Roy in Kolkata, Bureau Report, India Today.